Okay, so hi everybody. Welcome to this online session. So today we will talk about a very interesting topic. It is related to students and how they can learn using effective learning strategies. So we have with us Dr. Flavia. So hi Flavia.
Hello, hi, thank you for having me.
Okay, so we would like you to make a little presentation about your teaching background and about you as a teacher, and then we can start talking about how to help students use effective learning strategies. So the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I just want to start apologizing by being late. There was a mistake on my part on time zones. I actually live in the UK, and I thought that we were 1 hour ahead of Casablanca time, but we actually 1 hour behind, and I just got it wrong. So I'm really sorry, and thank you everybody for still being here. Yeah, if you have any questions or you want me to, so I'm going to move a bit faster. But if you have any questions or you want access to any of the things that I mentioned on this presentation, just feel free to email me. This is my email on the bottom here, and also my Twitter handle. Feel free to get in touch, and I can send you more material, more information, more papers, whatever you want from this presentation. Okay, so just a very quick introduction about myself, so you know who I am. I am a biologist, I am a science teacher, a biology teacher. I am from Brazil. That's where I used to be a teacher. Then I moved to London to do my PhD in cognitive neuroscience and learning, so studying how the brain learns and processes new information. And then since 2017, I've been working with Seneca Learning, which is a free online platform that covers most topics from grade 6 to grade 12 if you use the US system, or Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4, Key Stage 5 in the UK. It's all free, and you can go there and check it out because there are lots of interesting tools, interesting contents that follow the neuroscience principles that I'm going to talk to you here about. Okay, so this presentation is 3 steps. And it's about effective learning strategies. Why don't students use them? And how we can help them to use those strategies if they're not using them yet. So what are effective learning strategies? Before I start, just take 2 seconds to think about your own students. What do they do when they are revising or reviewing a topic? Which of those do they do if they have an exam in 2 weeks? So just think about it for 5 seconds. I'll go back to that slide later on. So what are effective learning strategies? They are the ones that, according to research, are more effective than others. So they are not about guessing, they are not about thinking, I think this works better, I think this works better. They're about like actual evidence-informed, evidence-based strategies that have been tested, validated, replicated, and really we know that they work. So these are the effective learning strategies. And I have 3 of them that I think are the most important ones. First one is retrieval practice, which is actively bringing information to mind. That's more effective than passively trying to absorb the information. So if you answer questions, if you use flashcards, past papers, if students explain why and how things happen, they understand that information and they memorize it there better than if they're just reading a book or watching a video passively. So the more you bring things back to mind, the better you understand and remember that information. Same thing with students. The more they answer questions about the content, the more they learn that content. We just have to be careful with misconceptions. So if a student understood something wrong and he retrieves the wrong information, that information is going to be stronger in their brain, even though it's wrong. So, retrieval practice is great, but as long as we make sure that students are retrieving the correct information, otherwise they're just gonna be even harder to remove later on. This is an analogy that I like to use for retrieval practice. So basically, if you think about a maze and then the entrance of the maze is the question and the exit is the correct answer, then if students are always reading the same book or the same text or watching the same video, there's only one path that leads them from the entrance to the exit. But if they're using retrieval practice and they get to answer questions, explain in their own words, then there are several paths that lead them from the entrance to the exit. So it makes it easier for the brain to process, understand, and remember that information. The other one, actually two in one, they are spacing and interleaving. So these are the idea that if we spread out study sessions and we switch between topics, that's more effective than if we just cramming all together. So if a student has an exam in 3 weeks, most of them will just wait until 2 days before to start studying, and then they're gonna cram and study a lot of the same subject together. That's not helpful. That may help them to get a good grade on the exam, but it's not going to help them to have long-term learning, long-term memory, right? So it may help them to memorize enough for the exam and get a good grade, okay, but it's not going to help them to actually learn that information. It will work better if they plan ahead, they have a study schedule, and then they study a little bit of each subject spaced out on those 3 weeks, so they can follow the forgetting curve here. So this is something that we've known, this graph here, since 1885. And that means that when you learn something, it takes you on average 1 day to forget 20% of that. If you revisit that information and learn them again, it's going to take you 2 days to forget 20%. If you do it again, it's going to take you 4 days. So the more you revisit previous topics, the more or the less you forget. So the more you remember about that topic. So that's the idea. If students study only once, even if they do 24 hours of studying, they're gonna forget. It's more efficient for the long-term memory if they study a little bit over several days. The one thing to keep in mind here is the curriculum, which is something that we, depending on the school or the country that you are, there's a lot to cover as teachers. So revisiting past topics can be tricky if you have a lot of new topics to cover, but it is important to find the time to revisit those topics. And there are several things that you can do. They are quick to do, and I'll go through some of them in the rest of the presentation. And then the last one is dual coding. So that's the idea that you can combine words with visual elements. That makes it easier for the brain to process information, and it also reduces cognitive load. So if you have to read a text and watch a video or do a drawing at the same time, that's just too much for your brain to do, and you basically won't understand everything. But if you actually combine them, so instead of writing a text and watch a video, you have one diagram. So that's visual and words at the same time, but combined. That makes it easier for the brain to process, understand, and remember that information. And then you can do that with diagrams, mind maps, colors, timelines. Anything that integrates verbal information with visual information will make it easier for the students to understand and then learn that topic, that content. Okay, so there are a few very good articles that you can download. They are free to download. If you just Google them, you'll find them. So this is one of them, Strengthening the Student Toolbox. And this is another one, Principles of Instruction. Again, just Google, you'll find them, or email me and I'll send them to you. They explain all of those effective learning strategies, how they work, why they work. So they're a very nice overview of all of them. There are also several blogs that you can follow from educators that talk about effective learning strategies and share how they're doing those strategies, how they are using them in their classroom. So there's several very good ones that you can just follow and get very good tips on using effective learning strategies from other teachers. This is UK based, but there is a mailing list called CogSci-Sci, where they share, again, tips about cognitive science for science teachers. So if you're a science teacher in the UK, but probably international, I'm sure they're gonna let you join. You can try to get in touch with them. And then they're also on Twitter and ask to be added to the mailing list. Okay, so just want to show you all these blogs and articles and mailing lists just so that we have all the information, so we know what strategies work and what strategies don't work. But do students know that? Do they use the good strategies? And then we go back to the first slide on what students actually do. So when I give this talk, usually teachers say that students highlight textbook, read notes, and write summaries. But we know that what they should be doing is following a timetable, using visual elements, and testing themselves. So students do not use effective learning strategies. At Seneca, we had a survey done when we started, and only a quarter of students were using effective learning strategies, which is not a lot. And then, but there are also actual scientific papers about that show the same thing. So for example, in 2009, there was a paper that showed that only 11% of students used retrieval practice. In 2007, only 16% of them were using testing to enhance learning, which is retrieval practice. And then in 2017, there was a paper that showed that even if you take only the students that know what are effective learning strategies, 34% of them still don't use them. So a third of most students don't know about them, period. And even if you take the 10% that know about them, then 30% of them, 34% of them still not gonna use them. Okay, so it's really at the end you end up with just a tiny bit of students who actually use the strategies that we know work for them. So they're studying the wrong way. That's just an example just to go into one of these papers. Again, I can send them to you if you ask me, so you can read the whole thing. For example, the second one, do you usually return to course material to review it after the course has ended? 86% of them said no. So basically the moment they pass the exam, they are done. They will never revisit the topic again, which is not good. It may help them to pass. It won't help them to actually learn. And then on the top, how do you decide what to study next? Only 11% of them say that they plan the study schedule ahead. Most of them will just study whatever's due soonest. Okay, so just showing that they really don't go for the effective learning strategies. This is another example. Only 1% of them said that self-testing, so number 9 here, only 1% of them said that self-testing or retrieval practice is the number one strategy for studying. Only 10% of them even use it at all. And then if you go for reading notes and textbook, which is the passive one, which is the one that's not really working very well, that's more than half of students use them as their first strategy, and almost everybody uses that at some point. Okay, so it's like there is a black hole, and then everything we know about effective learning strategies is in that black hole, and students are floating around it, and it doesn't access it. They can't see that information, so there's something that's happening that we know all of that, but it's not reaching the schools, which is a problem, right? Because these are the people that should be reached by that information. So why don't students use effective learning strategies? There are 3 main reasons. The first one is that they are unknown. So like I showed before, most students don't even know that you can do something different from reading and highlighting. They don't even know. So it's up to us to actually teach them explicitly, just like we teach them about verbs and conjugation and photosynthesis and acids and bases. We have to show them and teach them how to study. Okay, there's a nice quote here on the bottom that says that if somebody's been doing something for 13 years, you expect them to be very good at it, right? So if somebody's been a construction worker for 13 years, you expect them to know all the good strategies to build a house. But students have been studying for 13 years and they still don't know how to study. They get to university, they get to college, and they still don't know how to study. So something is wrong in their training. We're not telling them, we're not teaching them how to study. The second reason is illusion of competence. So basically, that's a cool thing. It's actually bad, but it's cool if you think about it. It's just a cool phenomenon. So when students are reading the book or reading a text note, then their questions and the answers are all there together for him, right? For them. So they overestimate how much they understand. So they read in the book and they go like, oh, I know this, I know this, I know this. But that's because they can see the answers, right? So they overestimate it. If they test themselves, they only have the questions, right? And then that means that they will correctly estimate how much they know. It will seem less than if they're studying with the book, but it will be more correct. Okay, so this illusion of competence is the overestimation of future performance because you have access to questions and answers when you are studying by reading. So just talk through about that a bit more. This is a very nice paper from 2009 that tested that exactly. So participants, which were students, had to learn pairs of words, and then they had two types of revision sessions before an exam. Either they would just read those words again, or they would be tested in a quiz. So a quiz that would mock, like a mock exam for the actual exam. And then during the revision sessions, participants had to judge how well they would remember each pair on the following exam. So they had to answer that, and then they had to say, I'm going to remember that in the exam, I'm not going to remember that in the exam. So this is what happened with the actual exam. So don't worry about feedback and no feedback, just look at the gray and black lines or bars. So the gray bars are words that were reviewed in the reading session, so just reading of the words, and black are the words that were revised by testing, so using retrieval practice. And you can see that students did better on the words that they were tested on. So that's just another article of the thousands that we have that show that retrieval practice works better than reading. So we already know that, that's fine. But the interesting thing about this study is the other one. So what students thought would happen. And it's very obvious here that the graphs are flipped. So basically, students thought that they would remember the ones that they studied by reading more than the ones they studied by testing, when it actually was the other way around. So what happens here is the illusion of competence. They overestimate how much they know when they are reading information, and that makes them feel overconfident that they will do well in the test. But actually, if they test themselves as study strategy, that's when they do well in the test. So just to summarize this, one of the reasons why students don't use effective learning strategies is because they feel like they don't work. So it feels like when you're reading the book, you're learning more than when you're testing yourself. And that's why students keep using that. But actually, when you look at these graphs, it's very obvious that it's just an illusion, it's an overestimation, and it really doesn't represent what they're going to be doing on the exams. And lastly, the reason why students don't use effective learning strategies is because they are time consuming. So yeah, planning study sessions weeks ahead is harder, it's more time consuming than just cramming the night before. Creating mind maps is more complicated than just writing summaries, and answering questions, testing yourselves is just more time consuming than reading books. So a lot of students won't use effective learning strategies because they just can't be bothered really. It's just too much work, too much hassle, and they'd rather just keep doing the things that they know how to do anyway. So these are the main reasons. One, they don't know the strategies, the good ones. Two, the good ones feel like they don't work. And three, the good ones take more time to get started. So the important thing then is how can we help them, right? So what can we do to help students learn effective learning strategies and use them properly on their study, so that they become more autonomous, more effective learners, more active learners that actually they're not only focused on passing the exam, but they actually focused on long-term learning. That's what we want as teachers, right? We don't want them to just get a good score. We want them to properly learn that content. So, if you think about the first reason why students don't use effective learning strategies, it's because they don't know them, right? So what we have to do as teachers is to teach them. And we can do that by having assemblies where you just get all the students and you talk to them about them and you show them all how to use those strategies. We can have parents' evenings because parents, they don't know how to study, right? Because 20, 30 years ago, all they were doing was highlighting, reading, and writing notes. So if a child asks their parents, how should I be studying? The parents are going to probably say, highlight, read textbooks, and reread notes. So kids are gonna do that. So it's important that we as teachers, we inform parents as well about the effective learning strategies so they can help the kids and the students to then use them. We should be talking about brain and memory. So that's probably something that already is explained in psychology lessons and maybe biology. But I think it would be good to have more of a multidisciplinary approach to that, where you can have, for example, if you take one of those papers that I mentioned before, then you can work with that in psychology because it's a psychology subject. You can work with them on maths because you have to interpret the graphs and do the statistics. You can work with them in English because it's a different writing style than novels, for example. You can work with them in as history subject as well because you can talk about how science develops over time. You can talk about biology. So it's like you take all of the teachers in the year group and then all of you are working together to really explain to students how they should be studying, and you're doing that from all different points of view. So from history, psychology. So it's not just a psychology thing, it's a whole school approach, which I think works better than if you just wait until the psychology teacher tells them about that. That will be too late, probably only A levels already, so it's too late, and only a group of students. There are some videos that explain that very well, so you don't even have to make everything from zero. If you go on the Learning Scientists website, they have several videos for teachers and also videos for students. So some of them you can see study strategy, spaced practice, retrieval practice. So they will be explaining to students how to use each of those strategies and why they work. There are several blogs as well that talk about that. So there's one that I wrote a few years ago on how to create a revision timetable based on interleaving and spacing and retrieval practice. So you can find a lot of very good resources online. Those blogs that I mentioned before, they also have strategies that you can do in the classroom, and that will really help students to understand why using those strategies is important, how they can use them to actually learn more. This is a video that I like very much. I'm just gonna show you a bit of them. I don't know if you can hear the sound if I hit play, but let's try. If not, it's a bit older now, but so this is a student, a medicine student in Cambridge, and he made this video to explain how he studies for exams. And it's actually a really good video because he uses all the good strategies, and then he explains why he uses them. So he has these graphs that show up on the screen, he has examples, and he really talks about the research behind those study techniques from a student point of view. So it's a really good video to show to your students because he is a student himself, but he also knows what he's talking about. He has read the research, he has tested on himself, and he is a very good example of why they work. So I'm gonna hit play. Don't know if you will try. And here. Right, so yeah, you can see that I'm not gonna play you the whole video. It's a 20-minute long video, but you can see from this first 30 seconds.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we can't hear the video, the first second.
Okay, that's all right. So basically, everything that he says on these first 30 videos is what I showed you before. So he says, we as students, we're not taught how to study. Nobody tells us how to study. We just do what it feels right. But research shows that what feels right is usually not what actually works. So he's gonna show you, students, research-based revision tips that have worked with him. So everything that I said before. Students don't know about them because we don't teach them well about those strategies. Even if they know about them, it feels like they don't work, so they still choose not to use them, and even though they work. So this is a nice video. It's like basically this talk from a student point of view. So I recommend you following him, Ali Abdal, and then having a look. He has some other videos as well about like specific techniques, but this is the most overview one. All right, so just to finish this, I have a few, I know that I talked a bit fast in the beginning, so if you have any questions and you want me to go back to the beginning when I was talking about the actual strategies, just let me know. So these are a few things that you can do in your classroom that will help, that will apply effective strategies to your classroom. So this comes from the fact that students don't know those strategies, so we can show them how to use them. We can teach them. We can also show them if we do them in our own classroom. So this is one called hanging connections. It's like a color-coded retrieval practice. So basically, this one here, that's fine. Okay, so these are the 4 strategies that I'm gonna show you. The first one is called hanging connections. That's mostly for primary students or young kids, but I guess it works with anybody. It's just a hanger, and then teachers will go there and they glue different keywords to each arm of the hanger, and then the kids have to come and create like a 3D mind map about those words. So if there's a word there that says Shakespeare, then you go and you glue Hamlet or Romeo and Juliet on them. And then you create this 3D mind map, which is good because it's using dual coding. So you're combining words with visual information. It's good because you're doing retrieval practice. So students have to remember what information connects with which. And you're also doing a bit of elaboration because students have to explain. If you ask, so why did you put that word in there? Students have to explain why, what they thought were, and that helps with elaboration and metacognition as well. That's a very easy strategy. All you need is the hanger, and that should be fun to do for students, and they will be using the effective learning strategies in the classroom. This one I got from Blake Harvard's blog. He is listed on my previous slides where I talked about the different blogs. And this is called color-coded retrieval practice. So what he does is to ask he's a psychology teacher. What he does is to ask a question to students, and then they have to answer that question without checking any notes or any books, and highlight everything that they write in pink. And then they go and check the books, check the online learning, check other things, and complete the answer, and then highlight that in yellow. And then a week later, they do the same thing again. They have to answer the same question without writing, without checking anything, and then checking. And then they compare how much yellow and how much pink they got between 1 week and second week. So the idea here is that you're using dual coding because you have color-coded information. You're using retrieval practice because you have to remember the information. You're using interleaving and spacing because you are revisiting past topics, so things that you taught or your students learned last week. And also there's a bit of metacognition because it's very obvious to see if you have more pink or more yellow from 1 week to the other. So students should be, after doing that a few times, should be able to have everything in yellow. So everything, they should be able to remember everything without checking the books. So that is retrieval practice, spacing, interleaving, dual coding, all of it together, following the forgetting curve. So every time that you revisit, you answer that question again, it's gonna take you less time to forget them, and you're gonna need even less help from textbook and your colleagues. So this strategy is amazing because it's low budget. All you need is paper, pen, and highlighters, which I think most of us will have, most of our students will have as well. And he actually uses all of the 4 effective learning strategies that I mentioned in this talk. So it's a really, really brilliant one. This one is by Kate Jones, who I know gave a talk on this series sometime in the past, a few weeks ago, a few months ago. So I think you all know her anyway, but she suggests this retrieval challenge grid. So the way it works is that you have all these questions on the screen and then students have to answer them. And depending on the color, they are worth different points. So if you have a blue question, it's worth 1 point because it's something that was covered last lesson. If you have a red question, it's worth 2 points because it's something that was covered last week, and so on. So this is great because it uses retrieval practice because it's questions and answers. It uses interleaving because you have questions about different topics, not only that unit, you're testing students on everything that they've learned so far. And you're using spacing because you are revisiting topics from 1 week ago, 2 weeks ago, and even further back. So again, it's a brilliant strategy, low budget. All you need is the questions really and some color, but it uses all of the good effective learning strategies that I mentioned in this talk. And then the last one is by Adam Boxer, who is a chemistry teacher in London. He has these Excel templates that you can just download. So if you go on his website, it's listed on my previous slides. You can download the template, you can download the questions. He has it for all subjects and all age groups. Basically, it's just an Excel template where you have the questions, the answers, and the topics defined for each of them. And then there is a formula that randomly selects questions for you to ask your students. And then you can say, I want 5 questions about something that was covered last month, and then 10 questions about everything else we've seen so far. So you use retrieval. It's just a very convenient way to get a set of questions ready for your students every lesson. So you don't have to, so once you have all of those questions on the spreadsheet, that's done. Everything else will be done automatically for you. So you have a new group of questions to ask your students every lesson. So Adam and a lot of other teachers suggest that you spend the first 5 minutes of lessons after, registering, etc., to do some of these lessons. So some of these questions. So it will be retrieval practice, interleaving, spacing, all of it together, and very easy to do. Once you have the questions, and again, you can just download them from the website. All you have to do is click a button and the Excel spreadsheet is going to select 10, 15 questions for you. You give them to your students. They will be interleaved because they can be from any topics. They will be spaced because they can come from topics that you saw 2 months ago. And obviously it's retrieval practice. So it's another very good strategy that uses everything that we've talked about here. And it's low tech. I mean, you need an Excel spreadsheet, which I think most of us will have anyway. All right, and then lastly is give students tools to make it easier. So one of the reasons why students don't use effective learning strategies is because they find them hard to do or time intensive. And there are lots of good online tools that you can use to help your students. Obviously, Seneca is a great one because, like I said before, it's free. It does retrieval practice, it does interleaving, it does spacing, it does dual coding, all of it together, and it covers most subjects for most age groups. The way Seneca works is that I can show you if we have time, but if not, basically the way it works, we have thousands of different assessments and quizzes that you can select from and just send that to your students. You can send them via Google Classroom or just directly on the platform. And then students complete there. They're all self-graded. They're all automated marking. So then you receive a full detailed report about each of your students' progress on each topic. So it's a very good way for you to understand more about what's happening in your class, and also helps you to differentiate. So you know where your students, each of them, are struggling with, and then you can give them the necessary help and the necessary scaffolding. So that's how it works in the teacher way. It just takes you 3 minutes to select the assignment that you want to set, and then everything else is done for you. The marking, the reporting, everything Seneca does for you, free. And then on the student side, they will be seeing a little bit of content, so just the key information with images and diagrams. So we're using dual coding. And then after that, they will be seeing questions, lots and lots and lots and lots of questions, because that's retrieval practice. Those questions will come from different topics, so it's interleaved. And the idea, the platform will also recommend students to revisit that topic again a day later, or a week later, or a month later, so doing spacing as well. So Seneca does all of those good strategies for free to your students, and at the same time saves you hours on marking, and it gives you even more detailed, important information about your students, so you can be an even better teacher. You're already amazing, but you can be even better because you're going to have the data and the information to make those decisions. Okay, so as a summary, we know that some strategies are more effective than others, but students don't use them because they are unaware, they just don't know them. If they know them, it feels like they don't work, or even if they try using them, they're just too complicated and give up. We can try and help them by having an evidence-based classroom, so using any of those strategies that I mentioned, or other ones that you come up with, by using online tools that help students do those strategies, like Seneca, by explicitly teaching them how to study, which is something that we don't currently do and we should be doing. And then as a more like broader thing, more like high level change, is to have a curriculum. Some people call it a spiral curriculum. So you don't go like this, unit 1, 2, 3, and 4. You follow topics and you're always kind of revisiting past topics, connecting to the new one. So that's something that may need to be a school policy on how the curriculum is built. It may need to be even like a country policy on how much information we want students to learn and how that's being tested. So yeah, if we demand schools to have tests about each unit every month, then it's getting harder to do spacing and interleaving. So just like a bigger discussion to have with your peers and with your school about curriculum, how we create curriculum, how we structure the curriculum, so that it really allows us to do retrieval practice, spacing, and interleaving with our students, because that's what's gonna help them really learn better instead of just going from unit to unit, cramming the day before the exam. At our Seneca YouTube page, there is a talk by Kate Stockings, who is a geography teacher, and she only talks about the curriculum. It's a really, really great talk, so you can go and watch them. I can send you the links to all of these talks later on if you want. You can send me an email. Okay, so thank you so much. Sorry, that's an old slide from when I went to the ASC. But basically, this is my Twitter handle. This is my email. Just let me know if you want any information. We have a lot of personal development courses for teachers online and for free at Seneca. If you go on Seneca, there will be courses about dual coding. There will be courses about dual coding, about retrieval practice, actually written by Kate. So there is a course written by Kate Jones about retrieval practice on our website that is free for you to do. Really highly recommended. There is a course about dual coding written by Oliver Caviglioli, who is the most important name on dual coding currently. There are courses about assessment, how you can properly assess students. There are courses on feedback. There are courses on neuroscience in general. There are courses on well-being, on leadership, on online learning, online teaching. So a lot of those very good free personal development CPG courses that you can do online and get a certificate at the end. Okay, so I'll stop now. This is about Seneca, but I don't think we have time now. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you for inviting me. Again, sorry I was late. It was a time zone problem, but hope that you enjoyed that and you learned that. And if you have any questions, just let me know or get in touch with me later and I can send you all of those papers, all of the information that I mentioned before. Thank you so much.
So this was a really very interesting presentation, and we feel like we need to learn a lot about this. So I have a couple of reactions and comments about what you have said. So do you mean that we should maybe for students to avoid this what you call illusion of competence? Do you think maybe we should, when they revise, avoid looking at the answers? Because as you can see, most of the books or the course books, some of them have the answers included in them. So do you think maybe we should remove the answers and focus just on the questions to avoid this problem of illusion
Yeah, I think that's actually a very good point. So some books, they will have the question, then immediately below that they will have the answer or how to answer that. Yes, so if you just cover that, so if you're a student, you just cover that and you read the question and you try to answer that without checking, then you're actually doing retrieval practice. So that's great. So I think that's something that we can tell our students to do. We can tell them when you are reading the book, get a piece of paper, get something and put them on top of the answers and then read the questions first, try to answer yourself, and then look at the answers just to make sure that you are right or if you got anything wrong, which is also how flashcards work, right? So you can have the question on one side, the answers on the other side, and that's a type of retrieval practice, and it's the same idea. So you cover the answers, try to answer yourself, and then check the answers to see that you got it right.
So Flavia, you also have mentioned designing a curriculum. Do you think maybe other teachers from other disciplines like biology, psychology, maybe cognitive science, maybe they should be included or they should be consulted when designing a curriculum to find a way to implement those strategies?
Yeah, so I'm not an expert on curriculum. That's why I recommended that talk by Kate that we have. I think that curriculum should be more like a school approach or at least a department approach. So if you are a geography teacher, you would help to have an input of all the geography teachers. And there is something I can look it up and then send you some papers on the spiral curriculum, which is a useful tool as well that exactly that it tries to go for the interleaving and spacing features.
Yes.
Yeah, but then for the, I think maybe that's why you were asking for the explicitly the parts about teaching students how to study. I personally think that having all the teachers involved from all subjects is a good approach instead of just asking one specific teacher to talk about that in the class.
So you mentioned Adam Boxer and asking questions. Do you think asking the right questions is effective for implementing the right learning or strategies or generating questions, effective types of questions, especially in teaching and learning?
Not sure I understand. So asking the right questions instead of asking any questions, is that what you mean?
Yes, you mentioned Adam Boxer and that his site or his work is based on generating questions, right?
Yeah, retrieval roulette, yes.
Yes. Do you think teachers should maybe think about creating or asking the right questions in order to have students or to push students to use effective strategies?
Yeah, I think having questions is great. So I mentioned Adam because it was his idea, obviously, and also because he already has templates and questions. So you don't have to start from zero. You can just download what all the teachers have done before you. So it saves you time and then you can get some inspiration. But it doesn't mean that you can only use those. I think the best thing that you can do is download his templates and his questions, and then from there create your own, because you know better what your students need to know, or students, especially if you're in a different country. So Adam, like I said, is in the UK, so maybe not all of the questions are relevant to where you are or your school teaches. So I think download that, use that as a template, use that as inspiration, but then come up, once you get how it works, then just come up with your own questions, really focused on your curriculum and your students.
Okay, yes, thank you. So quickly, what is Seneca for those people who don't know Seneca? Is it a revision application?
Yeah, Seneca is a revision and homework site. It works on mobile as well. So it works on internet, normal websites, and it works on the apps. works on the phone, so you can download the app and work on the phone. I can show you a little bit. I didn't know if we would have time, but I can share my screen again and then show how it works. Or I can just, if we have time. Do we have
Yes,
time?
yes, you can share your screen. We have
Okay, so I'll do that. Let me share it again. Stop this. Okay, so let me open it. Okay, so this is the website here, senecalearning.com. Actually, if you just do this one, then it should take you to the main website where you can sign up and then get into this. So this is the UK page. So you see here that we have AQA and Excel, and then age group. And then for the CSE, Key Stage 3, A-Level, BTEC, Primary, everything on the UK curriculum. We also have, depending on which school you are, if you follow the American curriculum, you can click here on the flag, go to the USA. And then we also have, then you'll see that we have AP High School. So we have courses that hopefully adapt to what you're teaching. There are also some other, these are the most complete, those three. I don't think any of you will be in Brazil, but those three are the most complete ones. But we also have some courses for other countries as well. Okay, so the way it works, you have all of these here. So let's go for A-Level biology, is the first one that I see here. The way this works is that you have all the information here. So this is the whole course, like everything that students need to know, in this case for the AQA A-Level exam, but again, we have for other exams in other countries as well. So let's choose one of them. The way it works is that, no, that's the end of topic. The way it works is that it starts with the key information. So we have an image. So we're using dual coding here a lot. You have the key information with the image. So the students read that. They get to review what you talk to them in class. You can off this. Or you can also use it as flipped learning. So you can use Seneca before you teach the lesson on membranes, for example. So students already have an idea of what that is before they get to class. So you can do both review, homework, and also flipped learning. So you get there with dual coding. And then, like I said before, you have the questions. So we focus a lot of questions. There's only a little bit of text and then lots and lots of questions because that's retrieval practice. Everything with immediate feedback. So you know immediately, if a student, the student knows immediately if they got it wrong, if they got it right, what would be the right answer. So even if they get something wrong, they still learning. We use a lot of GIFs to make it more interactive, more motivating for students. So there's a lot of gamification, dual coding just to make it more nice, more visually appealing. And then you see a bit more of content, and then you're gonna see questions that can be about this content or about the previous one. So using interleaving. So again, retrieval practice, dual coding, interleaving, and we're gonna use spacing as well, because at the end, when I finish this session, the platform will be telling me, maybe you should revisit this content in 2 days, for example. So I can do spacing and revisit content and really learn properly. And then the cool thing that's happening here is that there is an algorithm that is keeping track of all of my answers in real time, and then selecting new questions for me, specifically for me, personalized, adaptive for me, from our database to optimize my learning. So each student ends up with a different learning path that is real time, adaptive, specific for each of them, and it really optimizes learning. We have done research about Seneca's methodology, and we show that, I can also send you that paper if you want. We show that students that study with Seneca actually can get up to 2 times better grades than students who study with the normal textbook, because the normal textbook is just one for everybody, where Seneca is adaptive and really differentiates students. and also uses retrieval practice, interleaving, dual coding, and spacing. Right, and then after you finish this, if you go on the teacher platform, that's when you're gonna see your whole report. So let me just show you how it works. How it looks like. I'm not gonna go the whole process now, but just so you know what it looks like. This is what you'll get to see. So you get to see, and this is the Brazil site. Sorry. Wait. I can't find it now, but basically you have a report, like a color-coded report that shows your students' worst grade, best grade, average grade, time studied, number of trials, if they improved, if they got worse, how many questions they answered, when they answered, if it was late, if it was on time. So you have this very detailed, insightful report about each of your students, about each of your topics, about each of your classes, and it really helps you to understand what's going on with your classes. So students are getting this very effective learning tool, and you are getting very detailed, nice information about those students to help you prepare for the next lesson and know what you should be focusing on.
Yes, I was on the platform and I also saw other subjects like English, psychology, biology, and other subjects. Yes.
Yeah, we have a lot of subjects. So history, geography, English, Spanish, French, sciences, math. Yeah.
Can teachers edit the material or
teachers,
include other changes on the material or the content?
If teachers can change the material.
Yes.
Not directly. So if there's something that you think it's missing or could be improved, there is a feedback button that you can hit, and then it comes to our system. It's just because, unlike some other tools that the school buys and spends money on, they get a license. So they get like this protective environment because they paid for it. With Seneca, because it's free, we cannot let people change the platform because just for legal reasons. So yeah, but you can tell us. So you have a button that says feedback. You click there, that comes to us, and then we can make the changes that you suggested. Yeah.
Yes. So Flavia, you can send me the papers that you have mentioned. We would like to share them with our audience.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay? You can send them and we can share them on Everyone Academy Facebook page. That was really a very interesting session. I'm just curious. You mentioned something about what feels right is not what actually works. Do you think that's exactly what students do, or adults, or people in general, when it comes to revision and preparing for exams?
Yes, that was more related to the illusion of competence slide, because there are actual research showing that students believe they are learning better with this one, but they're actually learning better with the other one. But I think the whole point of effective learning strategies is that they are not based on feeling, they are based on research, they are based on evidence. So I think that's the point here, is that obviously as teachers we've been teaching that we have a feeling, but we cannot just make our decisions completely based on feeling, because that feeling may be wrong. So there are things that, if you can and access those blogs, those reports, those papers that I'm going to share with you, then you have the research informed view as well to help you make your own decisions with actual data and not just feeling.
Yes, great. You said that we should teach those strategies. Do you think we can maybe integrate them into the lesson plans, or how can we teach those strategies? Because it will take some extra time on the part of teachers, right?
Yes, so I think some of them work on distance learning. So Kate Jones' retrieval bingo thing, it works. So if you just share your screen like we did now, and then you have the questions on the screen, then all students can answer them. So they work. Adam's roulette work. Blake's color-coded retrieval work, as long as each student have their own piece of paper, which they probably do anyway. So all of those strategies, except for the hanger, they work on distance learning. And yes, I mentioned some assemblies that you can have with the students. Obviously, with distance learning, you cannot put them all in the same room, but you could have an online lesson. So I think that you can always teach them just like you would in real person, in person. You can do that on distance learning as well. You should, because it's even harder because they are more alone. They are really studying by themselves most of the time. So I think knowing how to study is even more important if they have less teacher guidance during this context. Yeah.
Okay, can you quickly select one of your favorite tools here for revising? Number one, flashcards, studying groups, or mnemonics?
I'll go with flashcards. I think flashcards are very good because they are pure retrieval practice and they are also very low budget and low tech. So thinking about distance learning, some students don't have access to a lot of things at home, but I think most of them will have a piece of paper that they can cut and make flashcards out of it. I think study groups are really good, but they could turn into something else. They could be asking each other questions, which is great, but they can end up just talking about movies and music, and then
Yes.
it's not really doing the right thing. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for this interesting session. Do you have any maybe tips or advices for teachers who are teaching online and would like to use more of those strategies, especially online, not in the classroom? What do you think they should do, the steps or the process?
Yeah, so I think that the things that I mentioned about explicitly teaching students about retrieval, about study strategies also applies online. You can do the same thing. All those videos that I showed, the blogs, they all obviously accessible online. So you can send the link to your students so they can watch the video, the one that I mentioned from the Cambridge boy. You can just send that link to them and they watch at home and then you discuss in class. So you can do that. That will be quite easy to do. And I'm working on a new free CPD course or PD course for our website that will be available in probably a week or maybe two tops before Christmas. That will all be about online teaching. So that will be with tips on how to make good assessments, how to make good lessons, how to plan your time. All of that specifically directly entirely focused on online teaching. It's written by Courtney Ozaf, who is an American educator who's been teaching online actually for 15 years. So even before COVID, she has a lot of experience and she's just sharing the experience now with all of us who are now have to do what she has been doing for 15 years.
Great. So, Flavia, do you have any future projects, especially on your field, neuroscience,
Yeah, so currently
or in general?
I work with Seneca, so that's my full-time focus. I give talks, which I like doing and I want to keep doing them. And at the moment, we're actually taking Seneca to other countries, like I showed you before on the thing. We started in the UK. We have more than 4 million people using in the UK. But now we're taking it to the US curriculum, Brazil curriculum, Mexican curriculum. And then I'm working more on this adaptation. So adapting our methodology to the country-specific curriculum. So that's what I'm working on. I'll be working on next year probably as well.
So, so you work with other countries, other countries and institutions. Seneca, I'm talking about Seneca.
Yes, so Seneca started as a British project, but now we have the same methodology, so all of the neuroscience methodology, but applied to the curriculum of different countries as well. But they're accessible to everybody everywhere in the world. You just go to the website, you select which curriculum is more similar to yours, and then you can just use it for free. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you are in an international
So,
school.
thank you so much for the.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I was just gonna say that if you are,
Yes,
if
go
you
ahead.
work especially in an international school, then you're probably already using the AP high school curriculum or the A-level curriculum, so you can just go select either US or UK and use it for free.
Yes, I know that there are also courses, professional development courses on the site for teachers.
Yes, yes, lots of them. Very good ones, all free with a certificate at the end. I'll also send you the link directly to those courses and you can send it to everybody.
Yes, thank you so much. Do you have any final comments for our teachers and audience, also Moroccan people?
No, and just thank you so much for watching and staying until the end. And yeah, just well done for this whole year. I think every teacher in the world deserves like an extra round of applause for how you've been able to keep going during COVID and online learning. I know it's been very challenging for everybody. So just thank you and well done to everybody who managed to keep our students still learning, even during a global pandemic. And if you have any questions after this or you want any specific material, just get in touch with me.
Yes, of course. I will be waiting for the papers that you have told me about to share them with the audience. Thank you, and gracias in Spanish, right?
Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.